Hey guys, welcome to today's video, and what we're going to be doing is modifying a Nerf Hammershot. Now originally this has a 5-round drum, and it is attached from the front using the bottom half of the blaster, and also we're going to be modifying this top rail and changing out the hammer. So to start off, we need to take out all the screws. And the way that I do that is I take them out in a clockwise order. So you just start with one and keep going around. Lay them all out in a line. Then I didn't realize this till later, but a good thing to do in case you push something or knock them out of the way or something or they roll, just take a piece of tape and then put each of them in order on the tape. Even if you do bump into it, they'll all stay in order. So after we have all the screws out and we take the shell apart, I take the internals out, and there's a spring in here because this is a spring powered blaster, and we're going to be adding a spacer in there to give it a little bit more power. On the internal part of the gun, there's actually I think 3 more screws we need to remove, and after you take those out, the plunger assembly just slides right out. What I'm doing here is removing the air restrictor. As the name suggests, the air restrictor restricts the amount of air that goes through the plunger tube, which also restricts the performance of the blaster. So that's why I'm removing it, and I use a combination of those clippers that came with my 3D printer, along with a pick or a screwdriver just to knock everything loose. Another optional mod you can do is there's a O-ring on the inside part of the plunger. You can take the O-ring off and then use some thread tape, put it around where the O-ring goes, and then put the O-ring back on. Don't put too much or it'll create too strong of a seal and the plunger assembly won't move properly. What I'm doing here with the pick and the hammer is there's 3 pins in this, and I'm trying to knock them out without breaking anything. As you're about to see in a few seconds, I did actually break the hammer. Luckily that's the part I'm replacing, so it doesn't matter too much. But after we get them out and put the new hammer in and test fit it, you just knock the pins back into place and you can put it all back together. Now I'm just test fitting everything with the new front barrel attachment. I was originally going to cut off the thing that holds the front of the cylinder on with a Dremel tool, but it looks kind of cool and I want to save it, so I decided to use a razor blade to cut it off. When you're cutting plastic pieces apart with a razor blade, you don't actually use the sharp side of the razor and try to slice through it. That's how you break things or cut yourself. What you want to do is turn the razor around and you want to use just the tip of it and just kind of like gouge your way through it layer by layer until it gets thin enough you can go all the way through, but if you're lazy like I am, you can just snap it off. And I did end up using a Dremel tool just for an area that I didn't have a corner on to get a clean line with a razor blade. I'm using the clippers just to get a few, there's like supports along the inside of the shell. I'm just snipping off the supports instead of using the Dremel tool. When you use a Dremel tool on plastic, it gets like these little melted plastic bits everywhere. So I'm just trying to avoid that as much as possible. Once I got that part cut off, then I just put a few screws back in it, or I put all the screws back in it, just so all the pieces stay together and I don't lose them. So here I'm just test fitting this so that I know where to cut. This is a part from it's called the Buttershot on Thingiverse. It's a short dart mod for the Nerf Hammershot that has, you can either use a 3D printed short dart cylinder or you can use a empty short dart cylinder that allows you to put brass barrels in. I'm using the one that allows you to put the brass barrels just because I think it looks cooler. Now I did make a little bit of a miscalculation. I don't know how I did this, but the bottom Picatinny rail, I made a few notches too small. So I'm just going to cut this off for now, and then once I have everything together, I'll figure out how long it needs to be and put it back how it should be. Now the top wouldn't actually slide together with the original. If you look at a Nerf rail, it's flat on top and then it has like an overhang. I just had to cut that overhang off in order to allow my piece to slide on, just because of the way I designed it. If I would have changed something just a little bit, it would have slid on fine. trouble with the print as well. The reason I'm sanding so much on the barrel part of it is because it lifted up a little bit on one corner. I'm just trying to remove enough of it in order for it to lay flat against the back half of the barrel. And this piece is from a different kit on Thingiverse, and what it allows you to do is rear load darts. And it was originally for long darts, but I just like the idea of short darts better with the Hammershot. And I think the short darts fit better into this little piece as well. It seems like in order to put the long darts in, you'd have to bend them a little bit. I actually had to cut quite a bit of the shell away in order to get this thing to fit. And I had to cut from both the front and the back just because my cutoff wheel is not long enough to cut down far enough without cutting through other things too. It probably would have been easier to just take the shell apart further to do this. I wasn't quite sure how it came apart and I didn't want to break it in the process. The original design for the cylinder had these little tabs on the back. I assume they're to let it have a better seal. However, with the rear loading dart option that I'm doing, I can't really have those in there for obvious reasons. The dart wouldn't fit through the backside. So I just took a drill and drilled them all out and then used a combination of a razor blade, which ended up not working too well. So I switched to the drum sander and the Dremel tool. Now what I'm doing here is I mark out with a Sharpie where I need to cut the brass, and then I'm using a piece of tape as a guide for my cutoff wheel so I cut a straight line. So while I was doing this, I figured out a better way to clean out all the shavings on the inside of the brass rather than using a file or something. If you just take a razor blade, the sharp part of the razor blade this time, and just go around the inside of it, you can actually get all those shavings off really easily. What I'm trying to do here is the cylinder and the peg for the front of the cylinder weren't fitting together too well, and it wasn't creating a good enough seal. And what I ended up doing is putting a spring in the front of the cylinder, and once the spring was in there, it gave a better seal with the little foam piece that's on the plunger tube. This is the spring I was talking about. It's actually a spring from the bed of my 3D printer. I used a upgrade spring kit, so now I just have these springs laying around, and I kept cutting it shorter until it was the length that I wanted it. So that's about it for today's video. If you have any suggestions, put them down in the comments on what I should do, what I could improve on, or something that I did wrong. So another thing is, I'm not sure if I wanted the snub version or the hand cannon version. The snub version would be without the big long front barrel attachment, which is just for looks anyways. And the hand cannon version would be with that front barrel. So let me know what you think. Should I do the snub version or the hand cannon version? Before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.